I've been asked by Mark at Cerberus K9 UK to do a couple of how-to videos, so I thought I'd start with one on marker training, or as more commonly known, clicker training. Hello, my name's Dave and I'm going to teach you a bit about clicker training. In its most simple terms, it's just using a sound to tell the dog that it's doing something right. But if that's all it is, then you're not going to get the best from clicker training. In this short video, I'll try and explain how I use marker training to teach dogs new exercises. Clickers are just normally plastic contraptions, a box with a metal thing inside that makes a distinctive sound. They come in all sorts of colours, shapes, some you hang around your neck, others you would stick on your finger, some you get attached to your wrist, but in essence they're all plastic boxes that go click. There are two simple rules when using the clicker. Rule number one, don't use the clicker to get the dog's attention. Do not use the clicker to get the dog's attention. And rule number two, every time you click, the dog gets a reward. If you click accidentally, the dog gets a reward. If you click for the wrong behaviour, the dog gets the reward. So don't use the clicker to get the dog's attention. If you click, the dog gets a reward. Rewards. The reward is something that the dog really wants, something the dog really enjoys. It can be absolutely anything, but it's got to be something the dog really enjoys. Not something that you enjoy doing, something that you think the dog may enjoy more, but something the dog actually likes doing. It can be absolutely anything, but for the purpose of this video we're going to look at food rewards. The food reward has to be of a high value to the dog. The dog must really like it. As well as the dog really liking it, it has to have a few more attributes. Firstly, it needs to be moist. If it is dry, as in something like kibble or commercial dog treats, which often tend to be very dry, after several repetitions it will get stuck in the dog's throat. That will distract the dog from the training. The more you use a dry training treat, the less the dog desires it. So you need something the dog is going to desire, want to get long term, and for this it needs to be moist. As well as being moist, it has to be of a suitable size so that the dog actually wants to get it. Having it too small, the dog will very quickly lose interest. I find a cube about the size of your thumbnail is about the right size for most dogs. As well as being the right size for the dog, it can be too small, it becomes too fiddly to handle, it can be too big, so once you give it the dog it can take ages to chew it and eat it. You want it to eat it and enjoy it in a relatively short space of time. The best treats I find are cubes of cheese or cubes of hot dog. Both are the moist, most dogs seem to like them, and the cheap and effective training aids. When you're using cheese or meats, you should try to avoid grated cheese or shredded meat because they tend to fall over the floor and the dog becomes distracted while it's just grubbing about on the floor. So the thing we need to do now is couple the sound, the click, to the treat that the dog really likes. This is sometimes called charging the clicker. It's actually a process called classical conditioning, and there are certain rules that you need to follow while carrying out classical conditioning for it to be most effective. Not to get too deep into the theory in this video, But classical conditioning is basically a process whereby an animal learns to pair a biologically potent stimulus with a previously neutral stimulus. Through this pairing, the neutral stimulus elicits the same response as the potent stimulus. So the food, a biological potent stimulus, becomes paired with the previously neutral stimulus, which is the click. So the click elicits the same physiological response as the dog receiving the treat. So not only do we want this click to predict that the treat will be on its way, we need it to elicit the same response as if it had received the treat at the time it hears the click. This becomes a conditioned response. It enables us to bridge the time between the dog carrying out the action and receiving the reward for doing the action. For the classical conditioning to be most effective, two things really need to happen. One, the click needs to remain fairly constant. So swapping clickers isn't ideal. If you use your voice like I do, I use the sound yes. When saying the sound yes, you try and make it as similar as you can every time. But rule number one, try and stick to the same sound. Rule number two is there needs to be a gap between the click and the treat. It needs to be a gap of about a second. Doing the click and treat simultaneously is ineffective. Click and waiting too long is ineffective. It needs to be click, treat, a gap of about a second. If you say in your head, click means treat, click means treat, and it's at that sort of speed, there's no rush. Click means treat. Gap of about a second enables classical conditioning to take place much better, more effective than click treat or click treat. Click means treat. So now it's time to put all these ideas into practice and go and get a dog out.